Hello, friends, and welcome to Acts of Kindness. Here we share powerful emotional stories that remind us how a single moment of love, compassion, or sacrifice can completely change a life. From inspiring acts that bring hope to heart-touching journeys that make us cry and smile at the same time. Every video will take you on a ride of real emotions. Stay with us, because at Acts of Kindness, every story proves that kindness is the greatest miracle of all. Daniel's garage sat on the edge of a busy Dallas street, a place where the smell of motor oil clung to the air and the sound of clanging tools was almost constant. He was a 29-year-old mechanic who lived simply, working long hours to pay rent and keep food on the table. His life was quiet, predictable, and often lonely. He had a gift for repairing things that others had long given up on, whether it was an old truck, a worn-out motorbike, or even a child's broken toy. Machines to him were never hopeless cases. One warm afternoon, the sound of tires crunching on gravel broke his routine. A sleek black SUV rolled to a stop outside his garage, its glossy surface reflecting the sunlight. Daniel paused, wiping his hands on a rag, and watched as a tall, elegant woman stepped out. She looked to be in her late 40s, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit that marked her as someone from a world far different than his. Behind her, sitting quietly in a wheelchair, was a girl no older than 18. Her eyes were sharp, her smile faint but curious. Victoria Hayes, the woman, walked toward Daniel with the commanding presence of someone used to being in charge. "The chair's broken again," she said quickly, her voice carrying both irritation and exhaustion. "No one seems to get it right." She gestured toward her daughter Emily, who sat calmly in the wheelchair. Emily gave Daniel a playful smirk and shrugged. "Guess it's just tired of me," she joked, trying to lighten the tension. Her words carried humor, but her tone revealed a quiet ache beneath it. Daniel crouched beside the chair and ran his hands over the worn wheels and bent frame. He could see the poor repairs done by others. Quick fixes, meant to hold temporarily, but not built to last. He shook his head and looked up at Emily. "Don't say that," he replied softly. "Machines get tired, not people. You're not broken." His words stopped her for a moment. She blinked, surprised, then let out a small laugh that wasn't forced this time. Someone had seen her, not the chair. As he worked, Emily leaned forward, watching with fascination as his hands moved quickly and precisely. There was something comforting in the way he handled the broken parts, like he wasn't just repairing metal, but restoring dignity. Daniel explained each step quietly, never speaking down to her, treating her as if she was part of the process. For Emily, who was often spoken about rather than spoken to, it was a rare gift. She felt less like a patient and more like a person. Victoria remained by the SUV, arms crossed, observing closely. Her protective instincts were strong, and she didn't trust easily, especially when it came to her daughter. But as she watched Daniel work, she noticed the patience in his movements and the respect in his tone. Emily laughed at something he said, a laugh Victoria hadn't heard in weeks, and it made her chest tighten. For the first time, she wondered if this mechanic could do more than just fix a chair. Hours slipped by as Daniel tightened bolts, straightened the frame, and replaced parts from scraps he had stored in his garage. Emily's jokes kept the air light, and Daniel found himself smiling more than usual. When he finally wheeled the chair forward to test it, the motion was smooth, steady, and far stronger than before. Emily spun it around in delight, her grin wide as she exclaimed, "Feels like it could go faster than Mom's SUV." Daniel chuckled, relieved that she was happy with the result. But it wasn't just the chair that had changed in that moment. Emily felt lighter, freer, as though someone had quietly removed a weight she'd been carrying. Daniel hadn't looked at her with pity or frustration like so many others had. Instead, he had looked at her with respect, as though she was capable and whole. That feeling alone was worth more than the repaired wheelchair. For her, his garage was no longer just a workshop. It had become a place where she felt seen. Victoria approached finally, her heels clicking softly against the pavement. She looked at the chair, tested the handles, and then met Daniel's gaze with a mix of surprise and gratitude. "This "This is better than it's ever been," she admitted, though her voice was measured. Emily was beaming, and for Victoria that was everything. She gave Daniel a nod, the first crack in her polished, guarded demeanor. For Daniel, that acknowledgement meant more than money ever could. Emily couldn't resist teasing one last time before they left. "Guess I'll have to come back if it breaks again," she said, flashing him a mischievous grin. Daniel only smiled, wiping his hands clean once more. "Hopefully it won't," he replied, though part of him hoped she would return. As the SUV pulled away, leaving behind the faint scent of expensive leather and perfume, Daniel found himself staring at the empty driveway longer than he should have, realizing that his quiet life had just shifted in a way he couldn't yet explain. The next morning, Daniel found himself distracted at the garage. He tried focusing on a stubborn pickup truck engine, but his mind kept drifting back to Emily's smile and the way her laughter had filled the space. He told himself it was just another repair job, yet deep down, he knew it wasn't. Something had shifted. He wondered if she was out enjoying her newly repaired wheelchair, if she felt even a little more independent. The thought made him feel a quiet pride, the kind of satisfaction he rarely found outside of fixing machines. Emily, meanwhile, couldn't stop talking about him. At breakfast, she told her mother about how Daniel had explained every step, how he treated her like an equal, and how she felt different somehow. Victoria listened, sipping her coffee, unsure of how to respond. She had spent years protecting Emily, ensuring her daughter never felt the sting of the world's cruelty. But in her careful shielding, she sometimes forgot that Emily needed more than protection. She needed freedom, laughter, and connection. Daniel had given her a glimpse of that, and Victoria couldn't ignore it. Days later, the SUV pulled up to Daniel's garage again. This time, he wasn't expecting them, and his heart jumped when he saw Emily roll inside with a wide grin. "Don't worry, nothing's broken," she teased. "We just thought we'd stop by." Victoria followed, holding 2 coffee cups, offering one to Daniel with a hesitant smile. It was a small gesture, but it felt enormous to him. He accepted it gratefully, realizing they weren't just here for a repair, they were here because Emily wanted to see him again. Emily wheeled closer to his workstation, curious about the clutter of tools and half-repaired machines scattered across the garage. "This place is like a treasure cave," she said, eyes sparkling. Daniel laughed softly. "Most people call it a junkyard." She shook her head firmly. "No, it's a place where broken things get second chances. That's pretty amazing." Her words struck him deeply, echoing something he had always believed but rarely heard spoken aloud. For Emily, it wasn't just about machines, it was about herself, too. Over the following weeks, their visits became routine. Sometimes Emily came with her mother. Other times, Victoria would drop her off for an hour while she ran errands. Daniel taught Emily how to use tools, letting her tighten bolts or adjust small parts. She wasn't as strong or precise, but her determination was fierce. Every time she succeeded, her laughter filled the garage. For Daniel, it was more than companionship. It was watching someone reclaim confidence that life had stolen from her. For Emily, it was discovering a sense of independence she'd long craved. Victoria watched all of this unfold with mixed emotions. She admired the way Daniel encouraged Emily, how he never treated her as fragile or incapable. It was what her daughter needed, she knew. But part of her feared getting too close, feared that relying on a mechanic from such a different world might complicate their lives. Yet every time Emily came home glowing with excitement, telling stories of things she learned or jokes she shared, Victoria's resistance weakened. She began to see Daniel not as a stranger, but as someone who was quietly mending parts of their lives. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Emily rolled out of the garage to where her mother was waiting. She was breathless with excitement, showing off a small birdhouse she and Daniel had built together. Victoria took it in her hands, tracing the rough edges, and looked at her daughter's glowing face. Emily whispered, "He doesn't just fix chairs, Mom. He fixes how I feel." The words caught Victoria off guard. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized the truth. Daniel had given Emily something no money or luxury could provide: hope and joy. When Daniel closed the garage that night, he leaned against the door, staring at the fading sky. He hadn't planned for any of this, hadn't expected a wealthy woman and her daughter to walk into his life, much less change it. But they had. Emily reminded him that broken didn't mean hopeless, and Victoria showed him that kindness could bridge even the widest gaps. For the first time in years, he felt less alone. He didn't know where it would lead, but he knew one thing with certainty: repairing Emily's wheelchair had been the smallest part of what he'd fixed.